It's 1:04, and I think we've got we got 26 folks lined in, and today we have the pleasure of being led by President-elect Jeff. So, President-elect Jeff, I'm going to mute everyone, and you unmute yourself, and we'll hope Sam Marshall rejoins us here shortly. He's checked out for the moment. So,
no, I'm here. I didn't know when everybody was getting started, so I'm here.
Oh, there you are. I see you. Okay. All right. I'm going to mute all and turn it over to Jeff.
Good afternoon. President Steve is on his way to Atlanta. He didn't tell me why. I assume it's for cooler temperatures and less traffic, but we do wish him well. But welcome to the August 14, 2020 meeting of the Waynesville Rotary Club. Like an old evangelist in Oklahoma used to say, something good is going to happen to you today, and at least in part because you're participating in this meeting, and we all really appreciate that. Gordon Goodgame is our chaplain of the month, and Reverend Goodgame, I'm going to turn it over to you.
He is not. I am the chaplain for the month, but I want to introduce Gordon Goodgame, who's going to give the devotional today. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Jeff and lawyer Jeff.
Yeah.
First, any persons particularly we need to be concerned for?
We should keep President Steve and Mary's daughter in our thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. Okay, Steve's daughter. And
Gordon, I've got a daughter traveling back to the beach today.
all right. And you want her to get home safely?
Yes, thank you.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Anybody else?
My wife and I have several good friends at Silver Bluff. The pandemic is very active and raging at Silver Bluff. Let's pray for the staff and the residents at Silver Bluff, and particularly those who are victims of COVID-19.
Okay. Other concerns?
I don't really have a concern, but I have a joy to express. Today is my parents' 66th wedding anniversary, and my dad's been a Rotarian for well over 50 years.
Wow.
Congratulations.
That is good.
That's fantastic.
What anniversary was that? Oh, he can't answer. Okay.
66.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, there's an awful lot going on in the world, and we don't have to advise the Lord about it, but we can have it in our heart as we offer ourselves to be the kind of Rotarians that not only care for all of these persons we've just mentioned, but also where we find that this very clearly, this time calls for the kind of truthfulness, the kind of friendship, the kind of service that we're gathered for. So with that in mind, let us pray together. Lord, you know already the needs of your people spread all across this world. Some of us have never seen anything like it. And maybe there's never been anything quite like it. We don't know. But we ask right now that as we gather, you will keep on our hearts our purpose as an organization. You'll help us to build goodwill among people when there is so much brokenness and competitiveness and so much that is not right going on between persons. We hope you'll do more than just stop the bitterness, but that you'll help us be agents to build better friendships, and you'll focus us all on the sure way of moving toward a concern for all people, a general welfare that is very much there, and our total gift of ourselves to your service. Now, grant us good fellowship and help us from this organization and strengthen us with each other. We pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Gordon. Fred, is Fred on the call today?
No, I think Larry Leatherwood's our sergeant at arms today.
Well, I've got some misinformation, but none better than Larry to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test.
If you join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
Pledge allegiance
to the republic
to the flag
for which it
of the United
stands,
States of America, and
one
to the
nation,
republic for which
under
it stands,
God,
one nation,
indivisible,
under God,
with liberty
indivisible,
and justice
with
for all.
liberty and justice for all.
And all the things that we think, say, or do, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is
Is
it
it
fair
fair
to all concerned?
to all concerned?
Will it
Will
build
it build
goodwill and
goodwill
better
and better
friendships?
friendships?
Will it be
Will it be
beneficial to all
beneficial to all
concerned?
concerned? Thank you, Larry. I only have one announcement. Follow up on what we mentioned last week. The club is in the process of paying back or paying the foundation for monies that over the last couple of years that the club, now sometimes the club is slow in collecting money, and we need to keep in mind that we need to keep its coffers full and pay regularly and timely. But a check for $7,000 has been delivered to the foundation. And I just wanted to highlight our foundation. Now, we do a lot of fantastic things locally and literally it reaches around the world. And District Governor last week highlighted many of those things. But in my opinion, there's nothing more important that we do than facilitate the education of some certain local students going to North Carolina schools. I mean, there is no magic bullet that's going to eradicate the issues that we're dealing with today. But to the extent there is, I think it involves education. Facilitating that is extremely important. We've had leaders like Larry and Neil and Karen and Sandy and Bill and Mark and Mike and many others. And we, for most of you know, we give at least 6 scholarships a year, 3 to Haywood Community College and 3 to somewhere else in school in North Carolina, usually Western Carolina. And I think that is fantastic. And the lives it touches is immeasurable, the value that it helps for these students. I would usually insert a joke right now about Carolina and Duke, but I won't do that. But I will highlight our foundation. And in the months to come and next year, I am going to encourage you more so to make financial contributions and contributions of your time to the foundation, because I think it is exceedingly important and exceedingly good for local students here in this community. That is my one announcement and plug. Is there anything else that we need to announce to the club?
Oh, yes. I have a question. What is the stipend on the scholarships? Does it vary? How much are the scholarships?
It's $1,500 per student, and a student can per year. So a student can ask and receive that amount of money multiple years in a row. So it is not a huge amount of money, but it is a significant contribution. We have been raising funds, and through some of our, like Larry East and Susan Sorrells, have been helping us manage our funds and doing that well. We've increased the core amount, and when we are able to resume fundraisers, we are going to do joint fundraisers with the club and the foundation. But I've rambled on. The answer to your question is $1,500 each per year.
And can that be spent on books? If someone has a fairly nice scholarship, can they still use it for books and things, or does it have to go to the university?
The checks are cut to the institution, but then available for the student to use in any way she or he needs with respect to, books, tuition, room, board, whatever it is. And it really, really does. And our goal is to make more scholarships in the future and to increase the amount. And I think we'll be able to do that in the not too distant future. It really is. I remember as a kid getting some of these additional scholarships that really did help out throughout my education. But it is a significant thing that we do. So please keep that in mind. Are there any other announcements?
Yes, Jeff, if I may. Mark
Yes, sir.
Bumgarner here. I wanted just to announce again that our Open Door Volunteer Day, excuse me, will be Thursday, August the 27th, and we'll be looking for volunteers. That's not this coming week, but be the following week. And so if you have an opportunity to volunteer, I think in today's spoke, there's a link to my email. If not, look it up and give me a holler. And I'll, of course, at some point send out an email looking for volunteers and letting you know how many we need. Thank you. I look forward to working with all of you.
Anything else? Well, Larry East is on the Cecil. Do you know of anything else that we need to talk about before we turn it over to Larry?
No, I might remind everyone that we are recording today, as we always do, just kind of full disclosure. I will be editing out some of the early remarks that are more personal medical aspects, but just be aware we are recording.
Thank you for that. Larry East is our program chair this month. I understand that we may be hearing from Bob Hope and Jim from the San Diego Zoo later in the month. This week we have a better guest. Larry, I'll turn it over to you and let you take it from here.
All right, good deal. Thank you, President Jeff, or President-elect Jeff. I had the privilege of being introduced to Sam Marshall by the Young Professionals Club within the Chamber of Commerce. I remember my younger days before I was 40 when I qualified for that club, but since they're age discriminatory, I'm no longer associated with them. But they do a great job, and there's a lot. It's very exciting. There's a lot of new talent every time I see that list each year of new business owners, and that's where several of our speakers will be coming from this month to introduce them to introduce us to them and the expertise that they have in particular fields, as well as introduce them to Rotary and the good works that we do here as a club. But today we have Mr. Sam Marshall, who's the commercial and consumer horticulture agent for Haywood County. His program responsibilities include providing technical service to the fruit and vegetable farmers, the green industry professionals, and nursery growers, private and commercial pesticide applicators, as well as home gardeners. He also manages the Extension Master Gardener Volunteer Program, which I asked him to come and talk a little bit about that program today. Selfishly, I'd like to learn more about that because I think that's something I'd like to be involved in more down the road. And in 2019, the Master Gardener Program donated over 6,342 hours of volunteer hours or service to Haywood County residents. Sam can typically be found riding his mountain bike, hiking, obsessing over homemade pizza, which, Sam, I have to tell you, I just went on and pulled a bunch of recipes from my Big Green Egg, and I'm going to make homemade pizza tonight for my kids. So that sounds like something fun to do. But as he says, most of his time is just spent doing whatever his wife tells him to do. So smart man. Please help me welcome Sam Marshall, our county extension agent.
I appreciate everybody's time today. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Larry, I started this obsessive pizza journey a few years ago, and then last Christmas, my in-laws got me an outdoor pizza oven, so it's really upped my game. I'm sure my wife gets a little tired of hearing me obsess over it. So, but I do it again. I appreciate everybody having me. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to talk a little bit about today about the Master Gardener program. I'm going to assume that everybody can see my screen. If you can't, then you can just let me know. I am first and foremost, as Larry mentioned, I'm the horticulture agent for Haywood County. Prior to that, I was in Brunswick County down on the coast for about 7 years, and then recently moved out to Haywood last September. So I've been with Extension for a while, but I'm still relatively new to Haywood County. I'm going to talk a little bit, mostly today, about what our Master Gardeners do here in Haywood County, what our program looks like, and the things that we're involved with. And then if there's time, we'll go over just some fall tips for gardening if anybody has those questions. So one of the big questions that I get a lot, and I think in general across the state, is that there is confusion over what exactly is cooperative extension. We haven't done ourselves a whole lot of favors in the past, going through several name changes and iterations, but essentially North Carolina Cooperative Extension is a part of the land grant university system. That is a nationwide system. So North Carolina State University, of which I'm an employee, and then North Carolina A&T University are our two land grant colleges here in North Carolina. And nationwide, there are about 68 or so land grant colleges. So we are a nationwide educational system, and we provide non-formal technical expertise and sharing that knowledge with county residents or whomever it may be. If you are familiar with the land grant system, maybe you attended a land grant college. I'm an NC State alumnus, so I know there are a few out there, but yeah, these are our two land grant colleges here, and we're uniquely funded. And I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of how we're funded exactly, but it just, as many government agencies tend to be, it can be a hodgepodge at times. So a little bit about what I do in general. As Larry mentioned, I have mostly commercial horticulture responsibilities. So my job involves working with our nurseries, our landscapers. I do everything from nutrient and fertility management for nursery crops to pest, disease, and insect management for those guys, and as well as farmers too. So a lot of my time is involved visiting our farmers, visiting our growers, getting a sense of what they need. And sometimes if they have one question, it's trying to get at what they're not telling me. So a lot of my time is spent investigating not only what the issue might be directly, but what are some ways that we can address long-term issues and challenges that our growers in Haywood County experience. I am a part of the pesticide recertification and safety program. And then I do have home horticulture responsibilities, and a major component of that program are our Extension Master Gardener volunteers, and I'm going to talk specifically about that. So one of the things that I love most about my job is that I get something different every day. A few years ago, I was fortunate enough to go travel to Africa, to the country of Guinea. There are four Guineas in Africa. I was in the coastal country. But I traveled there. It was a farmer-to-farmer program through Windrock International. And I worked with essentially their extension agents on pesticide safety and training for their farmers. So there were some technical issues there. It's a French-speaking country, so I had a translator. So it's just one of those things that I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to go and work with all these folks. It was just an amazing experience, and hope to go back one day. If you ever have me back, maybe I can talk about that experience in more detail. And then we have our youth program through horticulture. So our 4-H program has a hort component to it, and I'm involved with that as well. So specifically, the Master Gardener program is not just a statewide or countywide program, but it's also a national program. We even have Master Gardeners in South Korea. So technically we are international. But essentially, the EMGV program is a part of North Carolina Cooperative Extension, and more specifically, North Carolina State University. So, my job is as an extension agent to provide research-based, non-biased, science-based information to home gardeners, and our Master Gardeners are a major component of that. So I train Master Gardener volunteers, and their mission is to answer home horticulture questions. We have about 65 permanent residents in Haywood County. So just me alone, I could never possibly answer all the questions that we get from home gardeners.
Steve Hartman learns the ropes.
And so our Master Gardeners field a lot of phone calls. They lend a lot of their time and expertise, not just with answering questions, but they're also heavily involved with community and school gardens. So we have the Canton Giving Garden. There's the Junalusk Elementary, Hazelwood, and Riverbend school gardens. So our volunteers are heavily involved there, teaching and demonstrating to youth participants. And they're also involved with teaching classes and doing demonstrations as well. Unfortunately, our garden tour was canceled this year because of COVID, but that was one of the things that in the past, Master Gardeners in Haywood County were really well known for. But we're all over the place, and all of our volunteers are involved with different and various aspects of horticulture. So one of the things I want to just stress this, but we'll talk about the volunteer program specifically, but some of my best volunteers are actually the worst gardeners. I know that seems counterintuitive, but as I mentioned to everybody who's entering the program, is that we're not looking for volunteers to be quote unquote experts at gardening. We're more focused on people who want to be lifelong learners and who are interested in reaching and teaching Haywood County residents about horticulture and how to do things the right way. With our program, we ask every year that Master Gardeners donate a minimum of 20 or 40 hours of service. The 20 is for recertified volunteers, and the 40 hours of service is for new volunteers in the first year. Each volunteer must also participate and take a minimum of 10 continuing education hours, and those have to be usually extension-based, whether it's through NC State or some other land-grant college. We have a lot of partners throughout the land-grant network. So a lot of those continuing education hours come from the science-based, research-based sources that I mentioned earlier. The big deal is, again, not that you're a great gardener, but that you want to have, or that you want to provide a service and to help folks who have questions. We work with a variety of clientele. We have folks in our group who are former chemistry and nuclear scientists. And then we have, we work with folks too who may not have ever graduated high school. So we do deal with a lot of folks. So our volunteers must necessarily be people's people in order to succeed in this program. I often joke with new volunteers is that the Master Gardener program isn't always about providing information as much as it is just being sort of a support group for other gardeners who have tried and failed. So a lot of times we're sharing those stories of success and failures with our clientele who we work with in Haywood County. As Larry mentioned, last year alone, we have about 100 volunteers in the Haywood County Master Gardener program. Last year, they donated just right at 6,000 hours of service. That's a dollar value of about $150,000. They attended nearly 1,600 hours of advanced training, and then they were able to reach nearly 13% of Haywood County's total population. So our volunteers are everywhere, and sometimes they can drive me crazy, but they're a fantastic group of people. A lot of diversity in our program from all walks of life. And it really does, I think, build how robust this program is and how strong it can be when we have so many different backgrounds and experiences in one program. And we have a lot of knowledge here. So not only are they getting trained on an annual basis, but they just bring, that sort of passion and that hunger for wanting to be a lifelong learner as well. So Master Gardeners do a lot in Haywood County. We do a lot across the state. And they really do provide a tremendous service to the county and to our county residents as well. If anybody's interested, our volunteer training, I don't have this up, but if you are interested or know someone who might be interested in becoming a Master Gardener, we're going to start our classes next fall. Typically, they were offered in the spring, but we're going to move those to the fall because I really believe strongly in some hands-on stuff, and the fall time of the year is more conducive to that. So if you like getting your hands dirty, we've got classroom instruction, field trips, outdoor instruction. We run the gamut. So we really do accommodate different learning styles from a wide range of folks. And again, I want to stress that you do not have to be the best gardener out there to be a volunteer. We just ask that you're committed to getting trained and providing service. So, Larry, do we have time to just maybe 5-10 minutes for some fall tips, or did anybody have questions about the Master Gardener program that you'd like me to cover before we move on?
Does anybody have any questions, or you want to go ahead and let him finish up the presentation, then we can ask questions at the end? Or anybody have any questions about the Master Gardener program? Sam, I've got a couple. If somebody specializes in a particular area, let's say, for instance, again, a selfish area that I've started looking into is bonsai. Mm-hmm. If you develop a specialty in that area, is that something that then you become kind of the area specialist in for answering questions in that area, or how does that work?
Yeah, we a lot of Master Gardeners have a broad palette of things which they're interested in, but many of them do have one or two things that specifically they want to learn more about. So if your thing is bonsai, or if you wanted to learn more about native plants or landscape design, or if you really happen to just be one of those unusual folks and you want to learn more about soil science, there are definitely avenues and paths that you can travel on to deepen your knowledge and your understanding. And again, as a volunteer, all we ask is that, as you're learning and as you're gaining this knowledge, that you're giving back and providing that service.
And when you say that your next round of classes, did you mean this fall they'll start, or because of the current situation it'll be next fall?
2021.
2021. Okay. September-ish.
Yeah, I think we would look at maybe like a mid-August to the end of August as a start date, and then we would go. Usually the classes are 2 days each week, 9 to 12. And I don't know right now what the details are going to be, just because we're really uncertain about what the next year would look like as far as training goes. We had to finish this current year's Master Gardener training online through Zoom. So it was a good success, but it's definitely a different situation.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Sam for this part of the presentation?
Well, if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer those at the end. I want to just briefly cover a few things as we go, but if a lot of folks are now, because we're at home more, we have gotten so many questions about home gardening and starting a garden and maintaining a garden. And if you fit that bill and you're just getting started, this fall is a good time to really strongly consider implementing a garden of your own. And the best way, the first step in anyone looking to have success is to take soil samples. I generally recommend that you take samples in the fall. So now would be a great time to do that as you're preparing for next season. So the NCDA, North Carolina Department of Agriculture, is the agency who's who tests and analyzes soil samples for North Carolinians. It's free right now, but there will be a peak season fee beginning at the end of November. So from December 1, technically, until the end of March, until April 1st, when they're free again. So I won't go into too many of the details about soil samples, but we do have boxes available at our office. You're welcome to, especially now, if you'll email or call the office ahead of time to let us know that you're going to be out so that we can have them ready and available for you. I'll skip the details on how to take a sample. But one thing I will stress is that on that box, there is a red line. Please fill the soil to that red line. That's all I'm going to say about that. We sometimes get boxes that are so filled with so little soil that I've had to call folks back, and they're not happy when they have to retake those samples. But all that information is there, and I'm happy to talk with you some more about it if you have questions. Fall cleanup is a good time to be looking at plant material that may be diseased or have insect infested plant materials. Raking away those materials, not composting them, or definitely not leaving them around the plants, because you only build up disease and insect pressure over time. So raking away fallen leaves away from the base of trees, that sort of thing. You can mulch leaves, and in fact, that's a great way to add some nutrients to your lawn or to your soil, is to mulch leaves and just kind of spread them along the ground. It does wonders over time. One of the things that drives me crazy is seeing leaves piled up in plastic bags on the street, because it's like that's all free stuff. So if you're looking for a cheap and inexpensive way to compost and recycle some of those leaves that are on your property, I would recommend doing that. Again, mulching, it's a great way to compost and add some nutrients. I'm going to skip over, just because the sake of time, I don't want to put everybody to sleep, but mulches come in a wide variety of colors, textures, and types. Larry, I'll provide this presentation for everybody to go through, but generally we can break mulches down into either a hardwood or bark type mulch. You could find softwood or pine nuggets. It's also sold as soil conditioner. The downside with using the pine nuggets is that if you get a heavy rainstorm, you'll see them just floating away. And it's all that money that you spent on pine nuggets, it's just going down the drain. So if you're going to use that, I would definitely recommend using pine nuggets in conjunction with pine straw, which is good in general, just as an insulating layer that you can add over tree roots and shrubs and landscape beds and that kind of thing. But keep in mind that the stuff is highly flammable, so avoid overusing it in near and around homes. Plastic mulch is not really something that home gardeners use a whole lot of, just because it's pretty expensive and not biodegradable. One thing that I will say is, if you are mulching, avoid this. Volcano mulching, you'll see this a lot. One of the things that happens as you add mulch around the base of this tree is that it creates these anaerobic conditions, and it will essentially trap moisture around the bark of the tree. Over time, it will kill the tree because it causes that bark to rot away, and then it's got disease and some other things that would make the tree decline. And you'll end up replanting, I promise you. If you're planting, now's an ideal time to do it. We typically think of spring as being the ideal time, but if you're planting trees and shrubs, now is the best time to do it. Generally, you want to dig the holes twice as wide as the root ball. And then when you pull that plant out of the container, slice away the outer inch or so of that root ball prior to planting. Most people don't like that, so If that bothers you, it won't hurt the plant, but if it really bothers you, then just kind of run your hands through it pretty vigorously to break up those root balls, because sometimes it can be so compacted. Diagram just sort of illustrating staking a tree. I don't actually recommend this method anymore because of the way that these stakes and ties are wrapped around the tree. You get rubbing and it causes the bark to break off in these sections. And a lot of times we forget to come back and actually remove those stakes. So over time, the tree will grow into the guy wire that's holding that tree up. The best method, if you're looking at staking trees, is probably the easiest method, is staking it from the base at the root ball. So taking some untreated wood, creating stakes, and then just putting them several inches away or so from the trunk of the tree. What will happen is that it allows the tree to move naturally, and as that natural movement, as that tree grows and ages, it actually creates a stronger, thicker bark. So it's less susceptible to high damaging winds or even sleet or freezing when it gets on the branches, or heavy snows in the wintertime. And the added benefit is that you never have to worry about removing this, because again, it's untreated wood. It'll just decompose naturally in the ground, and eventually it'll break away. So it's an easy and effective way, and probably the best way to stake trees if you're planting trees this fall. Okay. So that's a very quick rundown. I hope everybody's still awake. I'll take questions if you have them.
Sam, I got a question.
Okay.
I'm fortunate enough to have a chipper, and I've chipped a lot of white pine fronds and things that I've trimmed off my trees. Can I use that as a mulch in my garden?
Absolutely. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. The only time, go ahead.
Oh, I was concerned. I didn't know if the what turpentine oils or anything or whatever's in the oils would leach down into the ground and affect the vegetables or whatever I have for in my garden.
So that's a good point. One of the things that I didn't mention is that if you're using a hardwood mulch versus, say, something like a pine mulch, those mulches will actually change and slowly alter the pH of your soil over time. And that's a slow process, but pine trees grow naturally in acidic soils. If you're adding pine bark to the soil, you will slowly acidify your soil over time. So it's not going to be immediate. It's usually not harmful to the plant. If you're seeing over time that plants maybe are less productive, it's time to do a soil test. We can look at your soil pH and then make necessary recommendations for lime or whatever. Our mountain soils are naturally acidic, so I would stay away from doing too much of that, but it's not going to hurt anything if you're just mulching up a few trees here and there.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
How late can you plant like beans or tomatoes in this area?
So yeah, tomatoes are going to be a little bit late if you're planting now. I would go with quick maturing varieties of plants, things that have, say, a mature date of 55 days or less. So squash, zucchini, cucumbers are a good one. So anything along those lines. Beans, we're a little past beans right now. You could try, as we're getting into the cooler months, you could try snap peas, sugar snaps. They prefer a little bit cooler climate, so you could plant those, say, sometime in September, and they'll do just fine. But yeah, I would stay away from anything that has longer than 60 days to maturity.
So that's Larry Littlewood. I'm having problems with ground ivy.
Okay.
And I want, first of all, what is the best chemical to use to get rid of that without killing my yard? And then the second question I want to ask you is, because I think I'm going to have to some way reseed the yard, and I was thinking about aerating it. When is the best time to do that?
Okay. So if you're using an herbicide to treat ground ivy, I would recommend doing that first prior to seeding a lawn. A lot of times, go ahead.
No, I agree with you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So a lot of times, you look on an herbicide label, it'll say, do not reseed within 14 days of application. So depending on the product, that's going to dictate when you can reseed. If you're looking at ground ivy specifically in a lawn, I would look at using a broadleaf weed killer, something that's specific to broadleaf weeds and not going to kill the grass. So there's a number of those products out there. As we're getting into the cooler times of the month, I would look for things that have, like a different formulation. We can talk specifics. I think, for the purpose of this conversation or for this class, we'll just maybe give you some general recommendations, and you and I can follow up specifically. But definitely look at your broadleaf weed killers, something that can be used safely in a lawn. And there's a laundry list of products out there. And then your next question is, after you've applied your herbicide, you've gotten some control of your ground ivy, the next step, if you're core aerating, I would core aerate and then seed and then irrigate. And what that does is that a lot of folks skip one or more steps. But when you core aerate and then seed and then irrigate in that order, you actually kind of help bury the seeds in those holes where you've core aerated, and that will help germination rates. It also alleviates compaction too, but I would follow that sort of general step-by-step. So core aerating, reseeding, and then irrigating for better establishment. And you can reseed September through October, depending on the type of seed you're putting down.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, let's, if you want to just give me a call at the office, or you can send me an email, and we can talk specifically about broadleaf weed control for your ground ivy, okay?
Okay. Would that include kudzu? That same type of approach?
Yeah, if you're using, I assume if you have kudzu, you probably have a natural area or some area that's kind of wooded or something like that. There you have more options. There's a very popular product that I've used and had good success with called Crossbow, and that's triclopyr. I believe it's just triclopyr. But as we're going into the fall season, keep this in mind, is that plants like kudzu are deciduous, so they're going to be dying back anyway. So I wouldn't even consider doing an herbicide application for kudzu until spring of next year, when things are actively growing. That's when your products are going to be more effective, and you're going to have better success at controlling some of those invasive and innocuous weeds. But I've battled English ivy at our house all summer, and that thing is just a nightmare of a plant. It's awful. Yeah. But yeah, I would think about next fall, or next spring for control of kudzu.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, Dean.
Yeah, what is the best way and time to get rid of crabgrass that's in your yard, mingled into your grasses?
So crabgrass is one of those, we used to treat it as an early spring or summer plant. It had one generation in a season, and now it's gotten 2 or 3 or 4 generations in a season. So I would start with a pre-emergent herbicide in the spring to prevent last year's seeds from germinating. And then as you see crabgrass in the summer and the hotter parts of the month, you would look at your post-emergent herbicides for crabgrass control. So, it got to the point a couple years ago where I wouldn't even recommend crabgrass pre-emergent herbicides because it was germinating in January. If you put an herbicide down on a lawn in January, it's really going to do some damage to your grass. So, but generally pre-emergent crabgrass, and those products are sold specifically as crabgrass preventers, pre-emergent. So put that down, 1st of March, middle of March, that kind of time frame. And then as you get into the warmer parts of the month, you can either spot treat with a post-emergent herbicide, or you can broadcast if you're doing it in a lawn. But we have a very select number of products that could be used safely in turf grass to control crabgrass, because they're both monocots, they're both grasses. So you have to really kind of more or less rely on spot treatment. And then in that case, if you're using glyphosate or some of the, that's Roundup, those are pretty effective at controlling crabgrass.
What did you use with the with the English ivy? What was your experience there?
I actually used a tank mix of crossbow and glyphosate, and I used a methylated seed oil. It's also called a spreader sticker. It's basically an oil. It coats the molecules, and it allows it to sit on the plant for a longer period of time. So for plants like English ivy that have that really waxy cuticle, if you've ever sprayed an herbicide directly on the leaf, you'll notice it just rolls right off. So my strategy for English ivy is this. I will either cut it down with a lawnmower first or with a weed eater. I'll wait for the new growth to come back, just as those young little leaflets are starting to come back. And then I'll hit it with my mix of crossbow and glyphosate and my methylated seed oil. And that's when I've had the best success with it.
All right. Any other questions for Sam?
There's a lot of science. There's a lot of noise around chemicals and using pesticides. So if any of you ever have questions about that, that's part of my job. I'm happy to walk you through reading and understanding a label. So if you've bought a product and you've either lost the label or you cannot read the fine print because it's so small, you can give me a call and I can pull the label from the internet and I can walk you through it step by step. I'm happy to do that kind of thing because I'm big on pesticide safety. Pesticides are effective. They're a great tool to have, but you've got to know how to use them properly so that they'll be effective, but also so you can protect yourself, right, and your family.
Paul, we can't hear you.
I saw Mary Ann.
Microphone's working.
Mary Ann had a question, I thought.
Ed,
do you have a question?
Yes. One quick question for you. In previous years, they've had a program where you could turn in expired and or no longer wanted chemicals to a central collection area. Are they going to do that again this year, or do we just hold on to it till next spring?
Yeah, the pesticide disposal program, that's through the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. We partner with them on that. They typically do that in the spring around Mother's Day. The last few years, they were actually doing it on Mother's Day. So, but yes, all those events are canceled for the year. If you want to learn more about when those programs and pickups are going to be, you can visit the North Carolina Department of Agriculture's website, or you can contact our office to get those dates, because they usually notify us at least 3 or 4 months ahead of time when they're going to be.
Great, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Am I unmuted now?
We can hear you, Mary Ann. You're coming in loud and clear.
I have 2 huge hydrangea bushes that are old. The bushes are the healthiest looking things you've ever seen, and I can't get them to bloom.
Okay.
And I have fertilized them. And do you prune them, and how far back do you prune them, and when?
You have asked the $1 million question. I literally teach a 3-hour class, pruning class, just on trees and shrubs, and we focus on hydrangeas for at least half of that class, it seems like. If it's not flowering, a lot of times if a shrub's not flowering, it can be overgrown. It sounds like they're pretty big. If it's not getting, if they're overcrowded with, growing next to the plant or within the plant itself, sometimes that can affect flowering. pH is a big deal. I won't go into soil chemistry, but pH can really affect how tied up in the soil nutrients are. So you may fertilize every single year, but if your pH is out of balance, it may not let those nutrients become available to the plant. That's why I stress soil testing. Now, generally speaking, the time to prune hydrangeas, it depends on the variety you have. If you have the old macrophyllus, the lace cap, or the mop head hydrangeas, those are the ones that get pruned in the wintertime for flowering. That's probably as best I can answer that question without knowing.
You say winter time. When?
Winter time, yeah, December, January, when the plants are really dormant. If you're going to do heavy pruning, if things kind of settle down by the winter time, we may be doing some in-person stuff. I'll hold my in-person training for pruning. If not, we'll definitely have a pruning class that's online in this type of format. But the benefit of doing the in-person stuff is that we always do hands-on, but we'll do what we can. So you can visit our webpage. I'm going to share my screen one last time. If anybody is not familiar with it, let me go back to, it's haywood.ces.ncsu.edu. We offer classes. I offer classes year-round, but again, that's our pruning would be held sometime in January, 1st of February. So you can also just call our office if you want to know about upcoming events. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to jump in here.
Okay, go for it.
This is Rich Downs, and I'm a master gardener. So this is this is a testament to my fellow Rotarians. If you or anybody in your household is interested in gardening in any way, either starting or somewhere in the process of becoming a gardener, I want to encourage you to take the Master Gardening class. It's a lot of fun. You learn a lot. Unfortunately, I didn't take the class with Sam, and I say that unfortunately because I've since done some classes with Sam. I did his class on pruning last winter. He's extremely knowledgeable, and you can tell from his presentation today that he's a very personable and interactive presenter. You learn a lot, lots of practical application, and you really, really enjoy yourself. So if you enjoy working outside, piddling around in the yard, helping other people, I really encourage you to think about the Master Gardener program. It's really, really a great program. Thank you for listening.
And I want to thank Sam as well. And since I've told him we've got a hard stop at 2 p.m. And Sam, if you'll put me on your list to contact for next year, I'll certainly look at it and consider it. Sounds like a wonderful program. And with that, I'll turn it back over to President-elect Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Sam, thank you very much. Fantastic program. We want you to come back as a speaker and come back as a guest because we've got room for you in this organization.
Okay, great.
Fantastic presentation. Is there anything else for the good of Rotary? If not, we will conclude our meeting, and I hope you all have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sam.